being recorded. Please keep your cameras off. Thank you. Let me hit set. In the incoming days, we will be sending you a copy of this recording. We'll be also sending you a copy, or I should say, a link to the slides and a copy of all of the handouts. So you'll be getting all of the sort of information that we're going over through email. And so let me hit slideshow. So again, I am Samhar Johannes, and I am a subject librarian here at UMBC. My contact information is up on the screen, and my pronouns are she and her. I'm here with my colleague Jasmine, and I'm going to let Jasmine introduce herself.
Thanks, Simhar. Hi, everyone. I'm Jasmine Shoemaker. I use she, her pronouns. I'm also a reference and instruction librarian in the reference department, along with Simhar. Thank you for being here.
Jasmine and myself, we're going to be monitoring chat, so feel free to put in questions in chat. And we're also going to give you guys time at the end for chat. More questions. Let me go back. Okay. So an overview of the session, we're going to go over what is an academic research poster. So the definition and then what goes on it. And so in terms of the poster, the content, the layout, the color, and the font, all the best practices. Then we're going to transition to talk about Canva, which is a tool that you can use to create a poster. And we're going to talk about the 2 different ways to create a Canva poster. But our actual goal is to spend the majority of the time actually doing a live demo. So we're going to show you how to create an academic research poster using Canva. So what is an academic research poster? It is a visual communication tool that allows you to present your research in a clear, concise, and graphic format. It attracts attention, conveys information clearly, and should initiate conversations. It can represent any stage of the research process. Researchers often create posters before the completion of the research project in order to invite feedback or collaboration. So the key aspect of this slide is that at any stage of the research process, so the beginning, the middle, the end, 2 years after you finish, you can create a research poster. So before you open up Canva, you have a lot of work to do beforehand. You have to create the content that goes on the poster. So write the text, draw, or gather the images, make the charts. Then you determine the layout of the poster, and then you have to determine the color and the font schemes. In order to make the entire process less stressful, you need to complete step 1, 2, and 3 before you open up Canva. So let's talk about best practices when it comes to the content of the poster. The most important thing when it comes to content is that you need to write the text, gather the images, make the charts, and have it in one centralized location. So the only thing that you're doing is sort of copying and pasting, or you're uploading. This will make the entire process of creating a poster so much less stressful. You're going to save yourself a lot of time and energy. So every conference and every discipline has its own requirements when it comes to what goes on a poster, but most conferences, most disciplines, follow the following suggestions. Have a title. It needs to be professional but catchy, usually 1 to 2 lines. Then right underneath the title is your information. So you state your name, your faculty advisor's name, your colleagues, your department, and then your institution. And when I say institution, you need to write out University of Maryland, Baltimore County. We all know what UMBC stands for, but if you're presenting somewhere in California or in some other state, they may not know what UMBC stands for, so you need to write it out. Also, it just looks more professional. Then an introduction/abstract or summary section. And this is where you simply just write a short synopsis of your research. The objectives. This is where you state the goals of your objectives. Something that I'm going to mention a lot, and Jasmine is going to show you a lot during the demo, is that real estate, when I say real estate, I mean space on your poster is a big issue. And so if there's an opportunity for you to reduce the text on your poster, you should do that. And one way to do that is to use bullets. A materials or methods section. This is where you describe the equipment or the procedure, and you can use a mixture of text and images. Images include figures or flowcharts or photographs. A results section. This is where you simply state, did your experiment actually work? And again, use a mixture of text and images. A conclusion. What were the major results? Was your hypothesis supported? Why is your research important within the industry or academia? And then what's next, whether it be what's next for you or what's next for this research. A reference section. And so for a reference section, it's all right to, for instance, just put maybe like the top 3 or the top 4 references that you utilize in your research. But then as people are sort of walking by, if this is a live, what is it called, conference, if people are walking by, you can have the full reference in a little handout. And on that full, in that little handout, which has like the full reference, you should also include obviously like your name, your contact, the title of your poster, etc. And then you end with an acknowledgement. And this is a mandatory section. This is where you state the individuals, or you thank individuals for their contribution and funding. And you disclose, this is incredibly important, you disclose if there's any conflict of interest or conflict of commitment. So you have to tell if, who gave you funding, who were your supporters, are you working for the people who gave you the money to fund this particular research in essence. Okay. Another thing when it comes to content, a text-heavy poster is incredibly dull. People are going to walk right by it, or this is an online conference. People are simply just going to hit next when they see your poster. So you need to, add some images, and different types of images include the following: photographs, charts, artwork, etc. The logo. So for Canva, or actually, let me take a step back. So for image resolution, when you are including images in your poster, you want the image to be no lower than 150 dpi. And we'll talk about that, and we'll show you how to identify that during the demo, or if not, we'll do a follow-up email. And then Canva is really specific about, depending upon what type of images you include, they have a preference in terms of what format it should be, what type of file, which is very nice. Okay, so let's transition from the content and talk about the layout. And so key thing when it comes to the layout is to keep it simple. You don't want to distract your viewers with sort of crazy layout. You want the layout to make sense. And so when I say you want the layout to make sense, you want to group related content together. So that means when people look at your poster, they read it in a certain way. You also want to have enough empty space, which means a negative space on your poster, because you don't want your poster to be crammed with so much text, so much images. You need to leave some breathing space. And you want to have the right combination of images and text, because text heavy poster looks dull and people are going to walk right by it, but a heavy image poster looks light on substance. And again, people are going to walk right by it. So you need to find the right combination of images and text. So here's an example of a layout. The title is nice and prominent. The author information right underneath. Top left, abstract. Bottom right, references. So when people read your poster, they read it from the top left. This is the starting point. and they end here at the bottom right, the reference. And so when they read it from abstract up from one column, far left column and down. They move to the next column from the top, read it down, from the top, read it down, and from the top here, and they read it down. So like I said, you start from the top left and you end from the bottom right. So that makes sense. So here's another example, but again, the layout is exactly the same. Title, nice and prominent, author information right underneath, top left, abstract, bottom right, references. This is what I meant about negative space. Empty space. You need to leave some empty space between the sections. Okay. Best practices when it comes to color and font. No more than 2 to 3, because anything more, it makes your poster look overwhelming, busy, it's distracting. You want to keep the text color fairly neutral, which is black. You want to keep the background colors fairly light, because think about it. You have a dark background with dark text, that's really hard to read. And then the last thing that you need to be aware of is shade differences. So the colors that you see on your monitors are not necessarily the same colors that are going to print on your poster. And what I mean by that is that usually there's a 2 to 3 shade difference of terms of like, so, what you see on your monitor may be 2 to 3 shade darker or lighter from what it actually prints. So I usually recommend, if you are familiar with the person who's going to be printing your poster, ask him or her, what color of orange will this actually be? Will this be a little bit darker or a little bit lighter than what we see on our monitors? I have been burned by this more than once. You would think I, would have learned after the first time, but nope. Okay, so font sizes. You are going to be working with 4 different font sizes on your poster. First one is the title. This is the most prominent text on your poster. Then right underneath is the author information. Then the header section. So this is where you write the introduction, the references, the acknowledgement, etc. And then last, the body text. And so you may find that you may start, for instance, with the title font being 80, but when you actually put it on your poster, you're like, it looks a little bit small. Like you may have to move it up. It's fine to adjust, but make sure that you stay within the range and record what you are deciding in terms of the font sizes, because like I said, you're working with 4 different font sizes. Last, font style. And so here are some recommended font styles. This is not an exhaustive list, but the key theme here is that they're all fairly neutral. You want to keep it, pretty conservative, pretty neutral, because you don't want to distract your viewers from, the Comic Stan, font style that you selected. Any questions? Okay. Let me put this to the side. Oh. Sorry, my computer is acting up. Okay. Oh, I just won't have to notes. Okay. So as we said, now that we know what goes on a poster, the next step is to sort of, put all of this on an actual poster itself. And so this is the front page of Canva. Canva is the tool that we're going to be utilizing to create a poster. Canva is a free-ish graphic design tool, a web-based content management and publishing resource that allows us to do the following type of sort of content. So we can create posters, invitations, social media posts, etc. We're going to use it to create a poster because, like I said, We now know the best practices in terms of the content, the layout, the color, and the font. We're going to take all of that information and we're going to put it in Canva poster. See if I can move this. There, moved it. Okay. So like I said, Canva is free-ish. Now, depending upon what version of Canva you have different features available. And so we're going to be utilizing the free-ish, or excuse me, yeah, the free version of Canva, which offers the following sort of resources and features. But there are other, there's other tiers of Canva. Okay. So when you create a Canva Canva account and you create an account with your UMBC email address, this is what the front page looks like. And it starts with a dashboard. And from the dashboard, you can create two different types of posters. You can create a new poster, or you can create a poster from a template. And so a new poster is referred to as create a design, or you can create a poster from a template. And so we're going to show you both, and Jasmine is going to do both during the demo. So from the template, excuse me, so if you're creating a poster using a template, which is the easier version, what is it called? You have a lot of options. You work with 8 different thousand templates. There's lots of really beautiful designs, but the key thing to be aware of is that if you're using a template, you cannot alter the dimensions. And so if you are creating a poster for instance, for ERCAT, and ERCAT has really clear dimensions of, let's say, 46 by 46. Here, if you're using the template, and if the template that you selected has a dimension of 36 by 46, that's it. You cannot alter it. A second thing that you need to be aware of when you're working with Canva, whether it's actually the template or the one that you create by free design, or I should say like from scratch, is that you have to upload all of your images to Canva before you can upload them to the actual Canva poster. And so Jasmine will show you that during the demo. It'll make a lot more sense. Okay, so that's basically a template. So let me go back. So from a template, you can like locate a template using the dashboard here. So you simply just type in, for instance, like free academic, or you just type in like academic posters or research posters. Utilize, pick a couple of keywords that you think accurately describe the poster that you want to create. You locate the one that's free, and Jasmine will show you how to filter. And then you make a poster. Now, the second way to create a poster is through something called create a new design, and that's from scratch. And so the way you do that is, again, from the dashboard, you select create a design, you put in the dimensions. So this is really nice. This is where you get to set the dimensions. So you can put in the dimensions for ERCAT in here. Both the free version, both the template version and the one from create from scratch, you can share your posters with other people. So for instance, if Jasmine and I are creating a poster together, which we have done many times, we can both create, or we can both edit the same poster. We can upload this within social media. It's really really great features. One last thing we wanted to mention before we switch over to the demo is that there are a lot of printing services that are available within the vicinity of UMBC. And so on campus, you have Common Vision. Around the school, you have FedEx, Kinko's, Target, Staples, etc. So there's a lot of options. Just know that the more time that you give these various businesses, the cheaper it would be. The less time that you give them, the more expensive it will be. So if you require a 24-hour turnaround period, it's going to cost you more. So I think this is where we make the switch. And so Jasmine's going to go, this is where Jasmine takes over. Let me stop sharing.
Thanks so much. All right, let's go ahead and jump right in. So Sempar did a great job of explaining what actually should go in your poster and other considerations before you actually start putting it together. Let's see some real life examples of what posters look like in Canva. So the first example, we have one from the University of Florida. We see here the title is nice and prominent. It is now in a kind of box centrally at the top of the screen. We also have the authors listed here, not full names, but first initial, last name. And again, as Semhar mentioned, posters are read from the top left to the bottom right. This poster, honestly, is very busy, right? We have a lot of images mixed with text, and the text is kind of varying degrees of size. So this might be a harder poster to read, especially if this is a poster viewed in person versus online, where you can't really make a lot of screen adjustments. Here are two templates that we found in Canva. We'll show you how to find these as we move on, but you can see here, very kind of basic gray background. The poster we'll be creating today will be on a white background to keep it more conservative and easy to view for anybody who would be viewing this hypothetical poster. But as we see here, we have kind of a varying range here in the bottom right for this kind of darker and then varying to lighter red. As Sempar mentioned, did a great job of talking about the shade difference of when you're going to print. So if you are very specific, I would recommend if you're printing somewhere like Common Vision, you can also ask them, would this shade be super different? Common Vision is really good about getting feedback to the person who is sending the poster in before it's printed and before you actually have to pay. Okay, so let's actually go ahead and get started by going to canva.com. You all are more than welcome to follow along in real time as I'm doing this, or if you just want to view, that's totally fine too. We're going to be sending the recording out shortly. So Semhar did a great job of going over the various steps. We're going to now talk about the content, which I provided, if you'd like to follow along and do each step on your own, as well as the layout and the color and font. I'm going to go ahead and drop a link in the chat to the Canva Drive. And if you open up this link, tinyurl.com/Canva Drive, let me go ahead and exit. There we go. You should see this Google Drive folder. We have a Google Doc version and a Microsoft Word version. I'm going to be opening up the Google Doc version folder, and you'll see two documents. The first will be the best practices. We'll show you step by step of how to create your own poster. You're more than welcome to download this and save it or make a copy, etc. We're going to be working from the Creating an Academic Research Poster Using Canva content document, the second document in the folder. So if you'd actually like to follow along with me while I'm doing the poster creation, I ask that you download or make a copy of this document. And you'll see here we have the font style, the color of the text, as well as the background of the poster, all listed out here. This is a very rough estimate of what the poster will look like. Further down on page 2 is where the content is. As Semhar mentioned, it's really important to have your content laid out. Canva doesn't really do a great job of catching any spelling errors or things like that. So highly recommend having your content ready to just copy and paste in. On the third page, you'll see the images. As Semhar mentioned, it's really important to download the images to be able to upload into Canva. So I'm going to go ahead and pivot over to canva.com. So the first thing that Semhar went over was the template, right? You do have the option to create from a template. So to do that, We can click template here in the center of the screen. And you can type in maybe academic research poster. From there, we see a few different options show up. Now, say for instance, I like this one just as an option. Before I commit to creating a poster from this template, it's important to go ahead and make sure the dimensions of the poster fit with where you are presenting. So as Semhar mentioned, maybe ERCAT has strict dimensions for posters submitted. You'll need to make sure the dimensions are clear and consistent with where you're presenting. So if this is good, you can go ahead and click Customize this template. Once you're in the poster and it is loaded, you have a few different options on how to proceed. So you could, in theory, move things around pretty easily. You could copy and paste from your content page into this and then move things around. You can even change the color or change out whole images. It's pretty straightforward with a template. I will say that sometimes you will have to play around with making sure your text is big enough. So here we have at the top where we can change various information regarding the text. I can change my font to maybe Arial and change all. It's really nice to be able to make global changes in a template. So if I wanted to change the font, I can click Arial and change all. I will say that sometimes it doesn't work. So you will have to double check your font here and change it to Arial. You can even increase or decrease the size of the font and change out whole graphs. Now, this might not be your style, which is why we're not spending a whole lot of time on the templates, but just know these are here to use at your discretion. We're going to pivot though back over to Canva to create one from scratch. So again, we've only started out by going over the template and searching, creating, academic research poster, right? From there, you can see some of those examples that Semhar mentioned earlier. Anything that has a crown like this means that it is a pro poster. You will need your pro account to do that. You can filter things out by category and style if that is more your scene. Questions so far about the template? Okay. We're now back at the home page. I'm going to now go to create here in the top left. And I'm going to click custom size. You can also click custom size here just under the search bar. So I know that I'm working dimension-wise with inches. So I would need to change under units to inches. Next, I'm going to select my width and height. I'm going to select 48 inches by 36 inches. Once I have this selected, I'm fine with this. This is what I want. I can click this lock button and create new design. So we're locked in. It's important to note to you all today that under the free account, once you have locked in your dimensions for your poster, you cannot change it. So it's really important to get the dimensions right before you start anything else. Okay. As I mentioned, it's really important to download, or Semhar mentioned, it's really important to download and save your images that you'll be using into your Canva. Now, once you have the images, if you're following along with me, once you have these images saved somewhere on your computer, you can click the Uploads button and click Upload Files. Now, I'm not going to do this part because I've already uploaded the files that I'll be using for today's session, but this is where you would go and upload any charts, artwork, etc. that you're going to be presenting on. I like to recommend to students to change the title of their poster before they start putting things on the poster. So you can change your title here, just above the ruler, and I'm going to say Workshop Demo. If you are collaborating with someone in your lab or a classmate, you can add them here by adding their email address. And again, Semhar and I have worked on posters together. It is very easy and encouraged to collaborate. So this is how you would add them to be able to work on the poster together with you or at a separate time. So if you've made a poster before, maybe in PowerPoint or another tool, you'll know that grid lines are your friend. They help you kind of space things out to where they make sense. But you'll see that there are no grid lines here. Canva likes to call them guides. And to add those guides, you'll need to go to File here in the blue bar, Settings, and Add Guides. So we did File, Settings, Add Guides. From there, we'll need to click Custom. And we're going to do columns and rows. So think columns would be 48 across with a 0-inch gap and a 0-inch margin. Next for rows, 36. So whatever the dimensions of your poster, 36 by 36, 48 by 36, you can think of it like that. And the goal of this is to make one square 1 inch. So we've put 48, 0-inch gap, 0-inch margin, 36, 0-inch gap, 0-inch margin. We're going to click Add Guides, and here are the kind of grid lines or guidelines. So now we're actually ready to start adding things to the poster. Now, I'd like to actually add in a little bit of dynamic with shapes, right? Not just poster, text, and images, but maybe some shapes to make it more eye-catchy, right? So to add shapes, we're going to go to Elements here. And maybe I want to search for a rectangle. You can type in rectangle. If you were like me and maybe wanted a rounded rectangle, right, just to add a little bit more pizzazz, you can click one that speaks to you, right? So I'm just going to do rectangle. Let's actually do this one. That one's kind of cool. So I do like the rounded rectangle. You can see here the corners are round. And I want this to be where my title lives. Maybe I'd like to keep this on brand with UMBC and change this to maybe an orangish yellowish color. So with this element selected, I can click this color here and choose one of the colors here or add a new color. I'm going to choose this peach color here. And there we have it. So my title will go here. You're going to see me go back and forth between Canva and our creating an academic research poster using Canva content document, because I'm going to now copy and paste in those text. So I have my title here. I'm going to Control C. And if I scroll back up to the top, as Semhar mentioned, there are recommendations for the range of your font size. So the range for our title is 80 and 120. We're going to start pretty conservative with 80. So I've got my title copied. I'm going to go back over and I'm going to double click. Oops. Should be. Sorry, friends. Having a little bit of an issue. Let's delete this. Let's delete this. Let's start over. Let's try to do it by adding a tool. Sometimes Canva doesn't like to see it as a text box, but it actually is a text box. So I'm going to go to Shapes. There's my rounded rectangle. And I'm going to Control C. We're going to change the color again to this peach. And we're going to select the text just by clicking it. I'm going to go where it says Comic Sans to change the font style. And I'm going to change it to Arial, keeping it pretty conservative. I'm going to change the font size to 80 and just click Enter. Last, I might want to bold my font. You don't have to, but just to see. Now I need to reposition the box. And move it to the top of the page. So here is the title in an element or rounded rectangle at the very top of the poster with a 1-inch gap from the top. So one box, one of these little white boxes is 1 inch all around. So this can help you to kind of determine spacing on your poster. If you go through and you're like, I need more space, or, things are wonky, feel free to move things around. Let's go ahead and practice again by adding another box. I'm going to still go under this tools. I think it likes it better if I do tools, shapes, and that rounded rectangle, which is the second rectangle. It remembered the color that I chose the first time, which is great. And now we need to add our author information. So I'm going to go back over to grab the author information. I'm going to click copy. If I scroll up, it says here that we are starting with 48 font. I'm going to go back over, double click. You may not be able to see the text bar, but it's in there, and I'm going to paste it in. Now I need to resize. And I'd like this to be all on one line if possible. As Semhar mentioned, it's really important to spell out UMBC. And then I can place it here under my title. Oops, just trying to get it in the center. You can always not make it bold, but it's very easy to bold and unbold just by clicking the text and changing it here. Not to be forgotten, I do want to resize this to 48. So I'm going to click 80, 48, enter. Any questions so far about adding shapes, things of that nature? Okay. Semhar is monitoring the chat, so if you do not want to unmute, she is there to answer any questions or let me know that there are questions. Okay, so we've got some pretty basic info on the screen with the title and the author info. We can resize the elements as we see fit and ensure that they are where they want to be. Let's go ahead and now add in the abstract info. Once you're in Canva, a lot of it is repetition and kind of reconfiguring the space, which is totally fine. That's the whole point of creating a poster. So we're going to go Tools, Shapes, and that rounded rectangle. I do want to let you know that you can actually type in abstract. It is recommended to copy and paste because there are spelling errors. You're human. So you may mistype something. Something like abstract would be pretty easy to see if it's misspelled. So for this section, we're also going to do 48. I've highlighted the text. I'm going to font size 4:8, enter. From there, I can make this a little bit smaller. And let's say I want this here. You can also put it a little more up or wherever you see fit. Now we are actually ready to add in the content or the word part of your poster. Now you could also put your text in an element or a shape like this. However, I'm going to keep it pretty conservative and just keep the black text on a white background. So let's go ahead back to our poster and copy the text from the abstract. As Semhar mentioned, it's very normal to keep your poster conservative. Your poster is not meant to reflect everything or all of the entire paper you research, just the highlights. So this may look very bare. It's because it's a made up poster. So yours might have more words, but we're going to keep it pretty light today. So to add that text that we just copied, I'm going to click this T text box here, and I'm going to click Add a Text Box. You'll see a little box appear in the center of the screen. I'm going to wait until I see those two opposite arrows. Go to the corner of the box and drag it to make it a little bit bigger. Now, I may not want my text here to be bolded. So I'm going to select or check the B to unbold it. And my body text should be starting out, we'll start for around 40. So we're going to click this 59.5 and we'll click 40, enter. So our text box got smaller. And here we have the text. Now we're going to make it over here. Again, we're just dragging to reconfigure the size of the box. You can also change the orientation, right? So maybe we want everything to be aligned to the left. Here's where you would select that under alignment. You can choose that or the right or center. We're going to choose left. So once our text is there, we can click and drag to where we want the actual text box to be. You can maybe click and drag the abstract. Pretty straightforward. I do want to show you all a trick when you're adding these elements. Say, for instance, we want to make a copy of this box. You can click on the box, hover over it, and click this plus with a box that says duplicate. So now we have two abstract boxes. This little caret here, you can click and drag this new element box down. So this, instead of a second abstract, would be our method section. So again, instead of clicking Tools, shapes, and the rectangle again, you can just make a copy or duplicate. So from there, we're going to go back to our methods, copy the methods, click the T for text box here, and add a text box. It's very small. Let's make it a little bit bigger. We're going to uncheck the B for bold. We're going to select 40 point font and enter. And we are going to paste or Control V our text in. I'm going to now left align my text, and I'm going to then reposition the text. This can be wherever you want it to be. The point of showing you that you can move it around is just that. Things don't have to be stagnant in this. But it is important to give yourself room around the edge of your poster because, say for instance, my method section is here, part of that box or element will be cut off, right? Or it'll bleed off of the page. So it's really important to give yourself some borders. And as Semhar mentioned, that white space, we have some white space between the sections and at the bottom. Now, depending on the real estate or available real estate on your poster, you could always increase the text size or the images. Speaking of images, it is now time to add in images. So if you're following along with me, you should have, oh yeah, thanks for being here, Theo. We'll send out the recording. You'll be able to click uploads and simply click on an image that you'd like to add. So let's do this colorful one first. I purposely did this because I wanted to show you that, yes, you can have the burst of color in your poster, but the coloring and the shading of it might change. So it may not be consistent with what you see on the screen. So we're going to resize this by just dragging down. All we did was click on it once and it appeared in the actual poster. Let's do this one. Click on it once and it appears in the poster. Now, say for instance, you're like, I actually don't need that image, or I want to put it in later after I put in more text. You can simply click the image and click the trash can delete button. Say for instance, as Semhar mentioned, having a logo, right, of a lab maybe that you're associated with, or a company that you're interning for. We have here the AOK Library and Gallery logo. Say, for instance, I want to put this in my poster as well. I can click that logo. I can resize the logo and put it maybe in the bottom corner, depending on the available real estate that I have. Now, one thing that I wanted to touch on, I know we have a few minutes left. A few students and faculty for that matter, tend to get a little confused. They're like, oh, I see yes, the guides and the grid lines are there to help me, but I can't really see the text. How do you turn off the grid lines? You can absolutely do that by clicking File in the top left, Settings, and Show Rulers and Guides. So now we just see the images, the text, elements, etc. that we've added, no grid lines. You can turn them back on by going to File, Settings, and show rulers and guides. Now, once you're done with the poster, say that we're finished, you'll want to lock the page. So if I try to move anything, I can't. I recommend doing this just because it can get a little confusing. You know, if you're working on a poster and you're like, oh, so-and-so made a change, it's really handy, especially if you might be prone to accidentally make changes. It's fine. Locking the poster is good. Then you'll want to share or download to be able to share this with your printer. So we can click the share button and the download button. Say, for instance, you're maybe sharing this at a virtual conference and they'd like the link, right? You'll need to copy the link and send it to whoever would request it. Then you would need to make sure that you would allow access to anyone. So anyone would be able to view it. Now your printer will be able to tell you what file type to save your poster as. So here are the different options. PDF is pretty standard. I know we didn't get to see the actual poster fully there and kind of together. However, Semhar and I have done this a number of times. Here is the finished product of the poster. So again, you'll see it's locked. Everything is here. If I wanted to make changes, I could unlock it and move things around. As Semhar mentioned, the acknowledgement section is very important. So perhaps maybe I don't have a reference section, but this would be fleshed out more. Other maybe conflicts of interest, etc., would be in the acknowledgements. Do folks feel pretty confident about making a poster in Canva? Maybe. Yes, no, maybe so. You have the tools. You know how to add text via a text box or in a shape like so. You understand how to add images by uploading images here and then clicking and dragging them. And you also know how to add your grid lines. I think it's a personal preference. That's a great question, Sarah. I think I prefer Canva over PowerPoint, and Semhar prefers PowerPoint over Canva, which makes us a great team to be able to do this. I think it's just about personal preference, what you have access to, right? And if you have any collaborators that you're working with, keep that in mind. This is a really easy tool to be able to collaborate with folks outside of the state, outside of the country. So it really is just based on what you're working on and how you work. Semhar and I have been known to give feedback on posters because we've done this many times before. So if you would like to share your poster with us for feedback, we're happy to give you some feedback on your poster. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing.
I have a